Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Just we're going to do another quick little kind of tribute to Paul Di'Anno, who passed away real recently, the former lead singer of Iron Maiden. I know the folks on the Hudson Valley Squares really wanted to kind of convey their thoughts and memories and things about Paul, even though I did a little tribute the day Paul passed away. But I wanted to leave it open for the folks here. Let me introduce everybody. We got Craig Kaminsky in the house, Rob Lasante, Count Ralphus, Ralph Tambora. Karen LaPreziosa and Ryan Scower all with us, and they want to talk a little bit about the late, great Paul Di'Anno. Ryan, we'll start with you, and I know you took part in a little bit of cool Iron Maiden stuff just this past weekend that you can talk about.
Yeah,
So I'll turn it over to you for some of your thoughts on Paul Di'Anno.
yeah. As did Ralph, but
That's
Nick,
right, yeah, both of you went. That's right. Yeah.
Nick couldn't had to work tonight, but he texted me. He's like, "Hey, I think it was on Saturday. He's like, what are you doing?" I'm like, I wasn't really, nothing much was going on. And he's like, Derek Riggs is doing a meet and greet like in half an hour from us at like a little brewery. So I said, well, fuck, let's go meet Derek fucking Riggs. I would say I'm not out of line by saying he's probably the most iconic 80s metal artist. I know we're talking about Paul, but I just figured I'd throw it in there. So even though it's not with Paul, I had him sign my copy of Number of the Beast. Uh, and I said, well, I'm there. I'm gonna buy a nice print for the man because he came out. So I bought this really cool print and he signed it for me of my favorite Eddie, the Somewhere in Time Eddie. So that was cool. I gotta find a place to hang this up, but yeah, that was cool. And then Ralph was there as well. Very, very, very cool to meet the guy who did the art for some of, probably my favorite band, some of the most iconic album arts, and obviously designed Eddie, one of the greatest mascots who has
Yeah.
had a million faces over the many years and many albums and many singles. But yeah, my introduction to Iron Maiden was Number of the Beast when I was like 14, 15. Still my favorite Maiden album, still one of my favorite albums ever. But I went back pretty early, like because I know some people like they go from that, get an album and you kind of go forward from there. I kind of just loved it so much I dove into everything. So I went back and I had Iron Maiden and Killers probably by the time I was like 16, 17, within a year or two. Of course, I was still pretty young, so that was like right around when I got my first job. So I think those were actually I bought them with my own money. It's kind of hard to remember, but Number of the Beast my mom definitely bought because I was very young. But yeah, I loved his vocals, and I'm one of those people that I don't really choose sides because when I think of those first two albums, he's the voice for him. When I think of the later stuff, Bruce is the voice for him. And to me, Bruce could never really sing the Paul stuff. He did it, because you want to hear those songs live. So he does a respectable job. But to me, they're Paul songs. Phantom of the Opera, Purgatory, Murders in the Rue Morgue, Killers. You know what? Honestly, every song on those first two albums is a classic. Like you can drop the needle at any point, and there's not a single song where you're like, I'm gonna skip that. There's not one. And if there's a song where someone would say that, I'm like, I don't know. Remember Tomorrow, Strange World, Charlotte. I mean, you could literally name the whole fucking albums, but and Paul's voice was such an iconic part of it too. It just fits so well. And people might feel differently about this, but to me, that first Iron Maiden album is the most definitive line between like the 70s and the 80s. Because you hear that album, and there is nothing in the 70s that sounds like a lot of what's on that album. Like what was going on in the 70s that sounds like Phantom of the fucking Opera. Like they totally blew the doors off it, and they really, I think, invented something new there. And I know other new wave British heavy metal bands were coming up and doing stuff too, but they were the biggest one, and I think they did it the best. Right out of the gate, 1980, come out with that debut album. Paul sounds great. The whole band is on fucking fire. People kind of give that album a little shit for the production because it's not Martin Birch yet, but I don't give a fuck. I think it sounds great.
That's great.
It is a little raw, that's true, compared to what they would do. And honestly, Martin's work with some of their later stuff is probably some of the greatest production that metal's ever had. Like when everything was gelling. But I love that first album. I like that it's a little raw and nasty sounding. It
Yeah.
fits Paul's voice, honestly. It's almost like a little more of like street metal. So
Right.
yeah, I've loved those two albums. Uh, a lot of times, like my favorite Iron Maiden album is the Iron Maiden album I'm listening to because I love so many of them so much. So there's a lot of days where I'll throw those first two albums and I'm like, man, this is the best the band ever was. Like this is just it's fast, it's intense. I kind of wish at times they did more songs like Purgatory when like fucking it's just almost like speed metal. And they never really went that route. Like they would get fast, but not in like that breakneck kind of manner that they did sometimes early on. So Phantom of the Opera, like when it speeds up and some of those riffs are like, ah, And the biggest problem I have with them now live, even though I still see them a lot and I love them, is they never play anything from fucking Killers. They never do. And it's a fucking thorn in my ass, but I'm
That's
not
a
Steve Harris.
shame.
I'm not Steve Harris. I'm not Ron Smallwood. I don't call the fucking shots. No one's calling me up. So, and I'm
Yeah.
still gonna see him. But yeah, I do.
Well, they do play Rat Child a lot.
Half child. Yeah.
It's
They've
been a
played it
while,
on
I
many
think, since
tours.
they busted that out. But
It's been a
man,
while. Yeah.
It
even like
sucks for us here in the States because for so many of us who are of a certain age, Killers is the first album we all got into.
Yeah.
That's kind of the album that really started to break them here. So yeah,
and it's a phenomenal. And I know a lot of people that's their favorite Maiden album, and I like not like they don't go back and forth. Like nope, Killers is it. And I totally appreciate that viewpoint because it is a phenomenal album. And if I had to pick a favorite between the two, I'd probably say Killers. But man, it's close. Like they are two perfect albums in my opinion. And Paul was a big part of that. Paul's voice
yeah.
really was a big part of that. I've thought about it a lot. Like when you listen to Number of the Beast, because that's still Clive Burr, still pretty much the same lineup. I'm like, could have Paul have sang these songs? And I don't know. Like Invaders is still pretty fast and has that upbeat tempo, and some of the songs do. But
Hallowed be thy name.
I don't know. I've wondered that if like Paul could have like handled some of those songs, but I think he would have done it differently than Bruce. He
Yeah,
would have done a
differently. I
respectable job.
agree. He would have done it
Yeah, he
differently.
would have
It
done
would
it
have been
differently.
fine.
They're definitely
And we don't
different
have like
singers.
there's
Yeah.
not like a lot of demos to be like, all right, here's demos of the songs with Paul to like kind of compare. So it's always like a thought exercise. You don't know, but uh, once you get to like Power Slave and stuff, it's like, all right, this is obviously written with Bruce's range in mind, and I get that.
Mm.
Then they were a much bigger band at that point. But yeah, those first two albums are perfect, and Paul's voice was a big part of why. So cheers to fucking Paul. Absolutely.
And Rob, you got to see them with Diano, correct?
Yeah. So my thoughts on this, you know, 1980, I walked into the record store in where I grew up in Hastings, and it's funny because there was a pair of a old lady and old man that owned this record store, and but they had Kiss records and everything, and metal had just really started out, Judas Priest and everything, and I was already into Priest by a couple of years, and then this album was in the rack, and I remember looking at it, and I'm like, this looks pretty cool. What is this? Who's Iron Maiden? I had no idea who Iron Maiden was. And I picked up this album. What was I? 17 and a half, I guess. So, and I was blown away. I remember going home, playing it. I loved every aspect of this album. Um, Paul's vocals, I liked it. I like the rawness, and I talked about this maybe a couple of weeks ago, or whatever, on the show, but I kind of miss sometimes the music from these first two albums that they don't do some of that today. Everything's an epic, and listen, I love Maiden. I've been a Maiden fan since this album came out. So I'm not putting them down. I'm just saying, try to go back to do some of the stuff that they did in the beginning, but it is what it is. And that's why we have these two classics. Every song on here I love. And then of course, when this came out, forget it. This was even I felt this was even better. I love this album, you know, uh, Rat Child, Murders in the Rue Morgue, Another Life, Genghis Khan, Innocent Exile, Killers, Prodigal Son,
Love
Purgatory,
Killers.
Drifter, and The Ides of March, how it opens up. Everything about this album is great. So I was at my story is it was with my buddy Rob, who watches the program, and he got tickets to see. He got us tickets to go see them down in as what happened there? Oh, there we go. There's the ticket.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
To read it.
Wow, that's
That's Judas
cool.
Priest and Iron Maiden at the Convention Hall, Asbury Park, July 2nd, 1981. He actually wrote all this. He gave this to me because I lost my ticket years ago. I don't know what happened to my
Wow.
ticket from 81.
Ticketron. Look at that.
Ticketron, yeah.
Look at the price, $8.
$8.
$8.
Can't beat that.
See two of the biggest bands in the world. Oh
Wow.
man. So, and I also got the playbill, which was I can't believe I still have this, but I was able to scan them and everything over the years. And Judas Priest had top billing. This show was It was crazy. I remember, I can still remember Iron Maiden coming out and running up to the front and, getting in front of Steve Harris, and just being like a little kid in the candy shop, I
Mhm.
just I loved everything about Iron Maiden, and I loved everything about Judas Priest. And Judas Priest was doing the, what do you call it? Point to Entry tour. But I gotta say, I mean, this was heavier than Point to Entry, their first two albums. So it was kind of different. Even though Priest, they did a lot of, like, classic stuff on those tours in the early '80s, Victim of Changes and all that, and Sinner. But Maiden, and I don't remember the set list. I don't think it was as long, maybe 45 minutes, I think they played, something like that. But I just remember that it was a great show. And, Paul Diano, he was good. He was good. I don't know exactly why they went with Bruce. I think partly, like what Ryan was alluding to, was I think they wanted a different direction, or at least Steve wanted to go in a different direction. And I don't think Paul was going to fit that direction. You know what I mean? And and it's sad. It's sad that I mean, he's only a couple years older than me. I'm 62. I'll be 63. And, I know he did other stuff. He did solo stuff and all that. I really never got into the other stuff, but those two albums for me, they're classics. They are the reason why I love heavy metal today. I mean, besides Sabbath and Priest, Maiden those are my bands right there. And Paul was part of that history, and he'll always be part of heavy metal history, no doubt about it. So rest in peace, Paul.
Right on.
Yeah, I think we always talk about those two albums, and even though he did a lot of other stuff, I think his place in metal history, even if he never recorded anything else, those first two Maiden albums, that'll do it right there.
No matter what he did in his life, he recorded those two, those three. He has that, he
Yeah,
recorded
yeah.
those
Oh,
records.
they're tremendous. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't see anybody else singing that.
Hmm.
Like those songs, even like I think I said this when I did my tribute the day he died. It's like, we've seen the band play the song Iron Maiden forever at every show for decades, but it's just not quite the same. Even though
Paul's song.
I've
It's
seen
Paul's song.
I've seen Bruce sing it so many times, but it's like every time he's singing, I'm like, yeah, I would kind of rather hear Paul sing this song, because it's just
And I'm a Bruce fanboy.
yeah, I love Bruce too.
But you're right. I prefer yeah, I mean, yeah, Paul's version. I mean, when I listen to it, it's not the same, and they're doing it on this tour, actually. So,
I just think his voice was more raw and
right.
authentic. I don't know.
They had a punk vibe to them in the beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It fit that era. I mean, I don't know. Bruce is so operatic and
It's just different.
it's
But
amazing. It's just
Oh,
so
yeah.
different.
Paul really was a great, like, emotional singer.
Yeah,
He had
yeah.
depth and range, and more than I think he gets credit for. Because people are like he's a punk singer, which is true, but he
Yeah.
really had like a
Remember
lot of
Tomorrow? He's so good on that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love.
Yeah.
a lot of depth to his voice. Really, really did.
Yeah, that was a
Craig,
lot of
your thoughts, Craig, on Paul Diano?
It's a tremendous loss. I mean, even though he only did those two albums, I mean, he really is a giant, in with this, because everybody knows those albums and those Iron Maiden albums, and loves them. I mean, my first Iron Maiden album was Power Slave, because that was, my brother had bought that, but I knew that and Iron Maiden was the first band that I really got into when I was a kid. And I knew they had a different singer from seeing pictures, only because, of course, nobody else I knew listened to Iron Maiden. So it's like, you're not going to hear them on the radio. And so I saw pictures in magazines. And even when you'd see this is my biography from 1984, beat up in the flood from one year. But it's like, even seeing like pictures like this, it's like, as a kid, um, he had short hair, and it was like, wow, I have short hair too. That's cool. Nobody else in these bands have short hair, and but his style and his delivery. I mean, it's, again, you guys have said that, you hear Bruce sing some of these songs, but he doesn't have the gravitas and the believability that Paul had to deliver, songs that say like, my mother was a queen and my dad had never seen, I was never meant to be. It's like
Yeah.
that's a gritty lyric, and Bruce can sing it, but it's not as believable as when somebody like Paul says, sings it. When Paul says, I just want to see your blood, I just want to stop and stare. It's like
Mhm.
I believe it. And I used to listen to both these albums a lot of times on the school bus, because I mentioned before in one of the old episodes I had a really long bus ride to school, so I could listen to like a 45-minute cassette, on my way to school. So, I'd listen to the first Iron Maiden and Killers. Killers is probably my second favorite after Power Slave, because it's just, the songs are tremendous, and the delivery that you hear. The song Killers is probably my favorite, because it's like, and the ending to that song is just perfect. The look out, I'm coming for you. With that laugh, it's perfect. I mean, and it's just, even as when I was a little kid listening to that, it's like that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. And songs like Another Life and Murders in the Rue Morgue, or if you were lucky enough to get Made in Japan, on
Oh
cassette,
yeah.
and you'd listen to that. It's like, this is a song about someone who's been wrongly accused of doing something. This innocent exile. It's like, and I ran out and bought. Uh, I saw a cassette of it's a Live Plus One. It was called. I think Steve Levin put a picture up on his page uh, recently, but it
This
had,
is it right here.
yeah, I had that on cassette because I saw that it had women in uniform on it, and I saw it because I saw that video, and loved it, and didn't I no idea that it was a cover, and then I heard the original, and it was like Paul just brought so much more swagger to that song. When he says, "Baby, I surrender. Let's have some fun." That's not in the original, and he just had such a cool vibe that worked perfectly with the band, yeah, they went on to bigger and better things with Bruce and everything. But you know, everybody who loves Iron Maiden still loves and respects those two albums, and that you'll be listening to them forever if you're a fan of the band. So it's like I said, it's a sad loss, that he's gone, but but yeah, we have the music forever. But rest in peace, Paul. And
You're right too. Made in Japan is like one of the fucking best live albums they ever did. It's
Right.
pretty,
five songs, and it's like, it's
so
like, wow,
cool.
this is so cool. And it was hard to find on that at one time as a kid, and of course now it's really hard to find, I guess, unless some of their CDs tacked it on to Killers in the remastered reissues. But yeah, that was always a cool little extra thing to have back then, since you had those two studio albums. It's like, oh, I got this little live album too. So yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
It's out there as a full show now. You can find it as a full
Yeah.
show. It's kind of hard to find, but it's out there.
Yeah.
Ralph, your take on Paul.
So it kind of goes in a little bit with the Derek Riggs, meeting Derek Riggs the other day. I had him sign my Martin Popoff book, and he did like a cool Eddie drawing in there.
Oh, nice.
oh, cool.
But I was telling Ryan this story when I was a kid. An older kid that was at the bus stop, and he was wearing an Iron Maiden Killer shirt, and I didn't know who they were, but I was fixated on the Monster Eddie. I was a Monster kid, so I kept staring at his shirt, and then he looked at me. He's like, "Do you like them?" And I was like, "Iron Mexican," because I thought the A was an X. So and he was like, "It's Iron Maiden." Like he looked at like I'm an idiot, and I was just like, "Oh." But I ended up getting this Killers in the first album and Made in Japan from a kid in school. I think his parents didn't like him having it, and he just like gave. I don't remember buying them from him, but he like gave me the albums,
Oh,
and I remember it was like the heaviest thing I had in my collection. It was like it was just the heaviest music I ever heard at the time, and they became like instantly like my favorite band at that time. But so I had Derek Riggs sign this the other day, and this is also signed by, oh, there's Derek's on this side, but Paul Diano had signed this too, because when Paul Diano came to the Chance, Nick was at the show. It was kind of a weird show because Paul's voice was really bad that night. He came out, he sounded great for like two songs, and then he struggled through the whole set, and he kept apologizing. But at the end of the show, he apologized one last time, and he said, "Anybody here wants a picture or anything signed?" He goes, "I'm going to stay here until every one of you," because he felt bad. So it was great because I had these albums in the car. I didn't know I'd meet him, but I just bring them just in case. And here's my picture. He ended up sitting down in like a booth, and I got a picture with him. And he was really cool. I talked to him. My wife got a good picture with him too, and he was really cool. I ended up talking to him about punk because on this DVD, this is a great DVD if anybody uh, can find this anymore. But Paul Diano on this DVD, he does an interview after the live concert, and he talks all about his love for the Exploited and all these heavy hardcore punk bands at the time. But on this DVD, his voice is so amazing. He does mainly all Maiden songs on this. He does a couple of his solo things, but he's got like a deeper voice. He's not doing the high notes as much, but just an amazing performance on here. I wish I would have seen this version. And they were supposed to come to the Sportland back in the 90s. I got a poster that was hanging in the Sportland, and I ripped this poster down, and it says 1995 they were going to play there, and it was only like $8, and I was like so psyched that that was coming there. And then the whole tour got canceled, so I didn't get to see him till years later. But when I met him, I also got the first album signed by Paul,
Wow.
and I got my Made in Japan signed by Paul,
Nice.
and I got a couple like other like singles and stuff like that. This is a cool bootleg live album. It's got Twilight Zone and Purgatory and Sanctuary. I got a cassette single of Sanctuary.
Wow.
And I got one of his albums. I got the one of the Killers albums. This is a really good one,
That's actually a
but I
good
never
album.
got all. Yeah, this is one of the better ones. I listened to his brand new one, which is kind of amazing how he was, even right up to the end, he was still putting out stuff. But I didn't buy the new one. But yeah, it's just really sad that you know, it was such an important band to find for me at the time. I think it really changed everything for me, and I just wanted to keep getting heavier and heavier stuff from then on. But yeah, it's really sad. He'll be missed.
You will be. You will be. But like a couple have already mentioned, his music's going to live on forever. And those first two Iron Maiden albums are iconic, and they will always be. So we'll always have those. So Paul, thanks for the memories. Thanks for the music. Hopefully your last days weren't horrible. And I know it's been tough for him health-wise in recent years, but Paul Diano has left the building, and we're now remembering him, and we always will. And such an important vocalist on two seminal heavy metal albums and one of the most iconic heavy metal bands. So, Paul Diano, may he rest in peace. Thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube all together, all the damn
All the
time.
damn time.
For Karen, Ralph, Ryan, Rob, and Craig, I'm Pete. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon. Take care.